Hello and welcome to Recently Seen. I know I'm a little bit late to the party, but today I want to talk about the first big theatrical spin-off movie to one of the world's biggest franchises. I'm talking about the Star Wars prequel movie, Rogue One. In a time shortly before the original trilogy, the rebels are struggling against the Empire and fear the coming of a planet-destroying superweapon called the Death Star. Turns out, however, that the designer of said weapon is a rebel sympathizer and has added a fatal flaw that can take down the whole weapon in one shot. It is now up to said designer's daughter and a ragtag team of brave rebels to steal the blueprints and get them to the Rebel Alliance in order to give them a fighting chance. But will they succeed? For all intents and purposes, Rogue One is a fine mix of good old fantasy and heist film, featuring a cast of characters that each have one very specific specialty, going up against impossible odds to steal the seemingly unstealable. It's inherently exciting and, most of all, it's really fun to watch. The characters in particular are handled rather well. Even though they're technically kind of stuck and all fit very squarely into some very old archetypes, they all get their chance to shine, and returning characters from across the franchise also really make their presence known whenever they're on screen. All the new characters are also pretty much instantly likable, which makes watching their interactions very enjoyable. And quite frankly, the whole movie is almost worth watching for the third act alone. Once everything is properly set up and the heist actually begins, Rogue One never loses momentum and becomes a very high stakes game of hot potato, riddled with blaster fire and explosions in an awesome action climax. I'll be the first to admit I'm not exactly the biggest Star Wars aficionado out there, but I think there's very little to dislike about Rogue One if you happen to enjoy Star Wars at all. That said, I do have a couple of personal nitpicks. My main complaint actually lies with the cast despite my earlier praise. As much fun as all of these characters are, it kinda bothers me that they're almost exclusively human. God knows I'm not asking for another Jar Jar Binks, but given the size of this universe and the sheer amount of interesting species out there, and the ragtag nature of this group, it seemed like a perfect opportunity to introduce some cool alien characters, but that never happens. We just get more humans, and honestly, that's a bit disappointing. And I will admit, I do feel that the movie drags a little in the first half. It mostly exists to get the group together and motivate Jin, who I'm sorry to say is definitely the least interesting of the characters, which really shows in some of the movie's more melodramatic moments. Thankfully, these moments are few and Jin does shape up somewhat, but there are moments that will have you watching the clock until the movie actually gets to the point. Oh, and the less said about creepy CGI Peter Cushing and Carrie Fisher, the better. Despite the obvious hurdle that is the foregone conclusion, Rogue One manages to be a very exciting adventure that not only fills a huge hole in the story and pays tribute to a popular fan theory, but also manages to be equal parts fun, exciting, and dark. Every time a character almost reaches their goal, something will happen to stall it, and it keeps things exciting and keeps the audience on their toes. Overall, Rogue One is a very enjoyable movie that definitely builds up well to the new hope that we all know and love. This has been Recently Seen, and I will see you guys next time. Hello and thanks a bunch for watching. There's much more like it on my channel, so go ahead and subscribe to have them delivered to you right when they're done. And if you like my work, please consider supporting me on Patreon and following me on various social media. Links to all of it are in the description below. See you guys next time!